a microcosm of that macrocosm. And if you notice, that line that represents the soul that I have going down never ends either. It never ends. It does not have to end. This is the angelic state of angel souls that forever live within the duality of time and space and forever create, forever act for themselves, forever bring their own souls perceptions of joy, of the joy and gratitude of what it means to exist. That is the angelic state. And in reality, everything that is brought into duality comes in the same way, brought into duality by another angel soul that begots you out of the one self and brings you now into a state of duality and gives to you the ability to forever act for yourself within the one self you are beyond time and space. If you look at this line that is the soul, that represents the soul in this graph, in this illustration, it has no end either. So if you can imagine, you will have to use your imagination for this. It is an abstract concept, but is easily grasped. Although that microcosmic soul that is brought into duality has a beginning, it has no end. So imagine that line ascending for infinity. There is never an ending point to it. If you compare that line to the macrocosm of which it emerged, they are both equal in length. And the reason why is because even though the one self is beginningless and endless, the soul within it is, when it is brought into a state of duality, endless as well. So if you compare two endless lines, even if one of those lines has a beginning point, if it is endless within time and space for infinity, it is never ending, just like the self of which it emerges is never ending. That is a soul that is a pure microcosm of the macrocosm. And souls that are microcosmic souls, that are angelic souls in a state of Merkaba, represented by the equal balance symbol of the Star of David, never die. Just like the deathless self of which they emerge never die. And they also are in a state of oneness continuously while they're in duality, also know that everything they create and experience and give to that which surrounds them instantaneously flows into the one self from which they are inseparably connected. This is a soul that is in a balanced state of Merkaba, as is said in Kabbalic mystic teachings, a balanced soul. And again, I want to say that this symbol of Merkaba is the Star of David, and it represents that microcosm that is endless and never ending, just like the macrocosm self of which it has emerged is never ending. And it is in perfect harmony, creating within time and space and knowing all of the creations that it brings to the essence that flows through all things as its own experiences as well. It knows that the experiences it brings to others, it is bringing to the primal self that flows and gives it life within time and space. So it never creates in a way that would bring suffering or pain to the one unified essence that endlessly gives it everlasting life within time and space. And that is why angels, who are pure microcosms of the macrocosms, never experience death and also are endlessly giving to the primal self joyous experiences, because they know those experiences as the essence that flows through them and gives them life within time and space. They are ever evolving as one. There was a paradigm within the self billions of years ago where there were no perceptions of death and suffering. Now you see in the paradigm of evolution that the self has chosen over the last few billion years, there are perceptions of death and suffering within the self. But these are just perceptions. The deathless self, the macrocosm, never actually dies. But yet there was a time in the evolution of the self where it followed the natural paradigm of which the self had evolved, in which points of duality were brought into time and space as souls, angelic souls, who forever lived and never experienced death nor suffering, but endlessly evolved within the self and created other souls and brought other souls into duality and gave them eternal life and continuously co-evolved in the matrix of duality within the one, giving endlessly to the one joyous perceptions through their own perceptions that they give themselves, and also the perceptions they bring to others through their interactions. This may look like a jumble of lines, but I'm going to illustrate this, and maybe you could follow the lines and better understand this illustration and what it's trying to represent here. This is just an illustration that's trying to represent a concept, not a literal interpretation of time and space. The one macrocosmic line is represented as the black horizontal line that flows through the center, which is beginningless and endless. Now, if you follow that line from left to right, you see the blue circle first, that then goes out and endlessly is a microcosmic soul. That represents one angelic microcosmic soul within time and space that never ends either. Now, the way the paradigm was set up for billions of years before the realms of death and suffering were created by the 72 fallen angels, the way that paradigm of self-evolution was set up and had evolved naturally is that these souls, approximately every, relatively speaking, Earth years — Earth was not around then at that time within time and space — but approximately every 1,000 years, these souls would then beget another angelic soul. And if you follow that blue line, the blue line on the black macrocosmic line that goes down through the horizon of this illustration, if you follow the blue line up, you will see other blue lines springing from it at about an equal distance apart. In some of the ancient texts, it used to say that it says that 1 day to God is 1,000 years to man. What they are referring to is this time period that angels had set up, where they would bring other points of time and space into duality and give them the ability to forever act for themselves, just like they did. They begat other offspring angels out of their self, out of the self, and brought them into the awareness of everlasting life within time and space. And they would do this approximately every 1,000 years. And these lines, once these angel souls came to be know themselves within duality, they never died within time and space. They were endlessly evolving within time and space and had everlasting life. And if you follow the blue line, you'll see there are 2 more blue lines. Now, I represent the blue lines. If you follow them all down, each one about equal distance apart continues to beget another part of time and space, bringing it into the state of duality and creating another soul, another angelic soul. They did this, and the expansion of the matrix of consciousness would forever expand like a tree, forever grow out, and none of the branches ever died. None of the branches ever ended. And they would endlessly evolve, and the self endlessly evolved in a joyous perception of deathlessness within the deathless self it is, as one. And if you follow these lines, you'll see that the blue lines are all connected. I have some of the yellow lines all connected. The red, the blue, and the yellow all emerge from the macrocosmic self. And about every 1,000 years, they will continue to create another soul and bring it into time and space and give it everlasting life within time and space as a microcosm of the macrocosm. And this matrix, this deathless perception within time and space, was how the self had evolved. This was the state in which souls within time and space that could act for themselves first became self-aware. This was the natural paradigm of the self within time and space. It was a paradigm of endlessly evolving in perceptions of joy. There was no suffering. There was no perceptions of death or decay or corruptions of bodies. I want to bring up again, as I had in the other videos, one of my favorite authors is Neale Donald Walsch, who wrote the Conversations with God trilogy. And in that trilogy, if you haven't read it, I suggest you do. It is just magnificent in its scope. Neale Donald Walsch asks God in his dialogue, why is it that I perceive death and suffering in the world? Why did you create it this way? And this macrocosmic God that flows through all things communicated to Neale Donald Walsch. He said, I did not create time and space, nor the soul within time and space to ever die. You have done this. This is your choosing. And I've explained in other videos how from our point of an embodiment within a DNA realm, an organism that perceives itself to live and die, It does not appear as we are choosing it, but yet